Within hours, I could tell that Destiny wants desperately to be loved by many different types of players, but your experience of it will be almost entirely dependent upon the expectations you bring with you. There's little denying that Destiny pulls at threads from many popular genres and attempts to weave them together into one interconnected tapestry. It certainly provides blistering firefights and brilliantly crafted worlds to have them in. In fact, the exceptional caliber of its moment-to-moment gameplay is what makes it okay that it never quite realizes its grand design. For as incredibly fun as it is, Destiny just doesn't fully commit to all its disparate parts, making it, simultaneously, many different things and none of them at all. From the moment your AI companion wakes you from your long slumber, the world of Destiny feels grand. Even on last-gen hardware, the craft on display here is masterful in its detail. Picturesque, static backdrops are slyly blended with wide-open spaces and large vertical terrain features, creating an effective illusion of scale. Incredible views like this one go a long way towards making Destiny's world feel like one that's worth saving, despite the fact that you can't fully explore it. Even when I wasn't stopping to gawk at how handcrafted they looked, these landscapes silently pulled me in and constantly reminded me that this is an actual place, a special place. Sadly, none of that keeps Destiny from becoming the latest example of the friction between open-world design and tightly directed narrative. Cutscenes are kept to a bare minimum, limiting story to vague exposition dumps before and after missions. It's not a new or effective way to unintrusively tell a story, though, regardless of how many Emmy Award-nominated actors you have reciting the lines.
Don't do that.
It says a lot about the quality of Destiny's combat that I gladly continue to move and shoot, despite it never really giving me an emotional incentive to do so. Destiny retains the fluid, tactical feel of the Halo series, but with an increased sense of speed and mobility that make its firefights feel more dynamic than those of its direct FPS predecessor. That's partly due to the ability to sprint and slide, in addition to each class's mobility skills, which include gliding, double jumping, and even short-range teleportation. Combined with how powerful grenades and melee attacks feel, thanks again to class skills that modify them, this extra mobility allows you to engage foes in a wider variety of ways. Destiny's intelligently designed combat areas provide excellent opportunities to leverage those options. It's an impressive design feat when you consider how organically they blend with the open areas that tie them together. Cover is smartly placed, and there's enough horizontal and vertical space to allow for a variety of approaches, even in the most straightforward combat scenarios. You'll face 4 different races over the course of your journey, and their armies are each diverse and interesting. They have a huge bag of tricks to pull from. Some foes, like the Vex, can teleport directly into combat, and others have jump packs, cloaking devices, or massive riot shields to aid them in their advances. The range of different problems they can give you to solve is downright impressive. With the exception of some of the bosses, who can be little more than supersized versions of existing enemies with a lot more hit points, each is so well designed and conceived that I never once tired of fighting them in the multitude of hours I played. That says a lot, considering that fighting is, disappointingly, the only way you can meaningfully interact with the world around you. Destiny's various RPG elements add some extra layers on top of its well-done combat, but they don't really feel fully explored or fleshed out. Part of that is because of what a poor job Destiny does of educating us about all its moving parts, but it's also because it's so hell-bent on being all things to all people. Destiny's class and skill systems are the biggest victims of this fact. The Hunter, Warlock, and Titan all do the same things, just in subtly different ways. I never felt that any one class brought something indispensable to my party. They all use every weapon type with equal proficiency, and until you get to the very highest levels of endgame gear, class-specific armor mostly just looks different. As a direct result, playing cooperatively with others feels more like shooting stuff with friends, rather than a carefully coordinated dungeon party. The RPG element that succeeds the most is actually the loot game. It doesn't overwhelm with any sort of statistical complexity, but rather engages by presenting clear, meaningful choices. It only really kicks in once you get over the early game hump. Drop rates seem abysmal until somewhere around level 11 or 12, and gear has barely any unique stats until then either. Eventually though, weapons and armor start dropping with better mods and entire upgrade trees that allow you to tailor its feel and performance in interesting ways. From weapons that reload faster when their clip is empty, to ones that speed up your ability cooldowns when you score kills with them, there's actually a decent number of different ways to gear, especially when you start getting into the legendary and exotic loot tiers. Surprises keep coming from new, even crazier mods. The problem though is that the methods for earning post-story gear aren't clearly explained or in some cases even alluded to over the course of Destiny's 12-hour campaign. You'll need to coordinate which bounties you take with what patrols you want to do, grind for several different currencies, and rank up in one of a handful of factions, several of which are tucked away in a dark corner of the Tower Hub. There's a lot of room for post-story progression, but you either just start stumbling onto it, or you don't. For a game that trips all over itself to be simple and accessible to everybody, that's an unnecessarily confusing curveball to hit. The half-baked nature of Destiny's RPG elements are just a symptom of a far larger issue.
You need my help, Guardian.
Destiny is straddling a border between too many kinds of experiences, and in its attempt to have something for everyone, it never fully satisfies on any one front. The competitive multiplayer, The Crucible, is the chief example of this. The few included maps do sport Bungie's hallmark map design. They're excellent. But without private lobbies to organize fights with friends, or any ways to customize the handful of game modes, it's hard to imagine the multiplayer shooter enthusiast who could possibly be satisfied with it.
Zone B, lost.
The same can also be said of how Destiny allows players to interact with one another, or rather, how it doesn't. Bungie calls Destiny a shared world shooter, and the influences from the MMO world are clear in its overall layout and structure. Yet, there's no way to communicate with anyone who isn't in your party, and there's no loot trading either. As someone who played mostly solo, I actually appreciated the sense of separation between me and other players, but people seeking a strong sense of community and cooperation won't find it here. Why do I need an internet connection for a game that feels so intent on putting barriers between me and other players? Simplistic comparisons to other games don't really add up when attempting to explain what Destiny is or why it's worth playing. It borrows from many well-established gaming destinations, but the climate of each is wildly different and often incompatible. It's a complex production that boils down simply to this. Destiny is a mechanically excellent, visually evocative FPS housed within an underdeveloped RPG framework. The gear game might hook you for the long haul once you fully understand it, but Destiny is ultimately unable to reach the same lofty heights of the games it's trying to be.